The following announcement is paid for by the Wrestling with Nerds.
From Mordor to Hogwarts to Gotham, the nerds have come together to create a show for nerds by nerds. Join nerds doing nerd things as they talk about all things nerdy. Stay up to date on the show by liking the Nerds Doing Nerd Things Facebook page.
Hey there, the name's Nukem, Duke Nukem, and you're watching the Nerds Doing Nerd Things podcast. For some unknown reason, enjoy.
What's going on, wrestling nerds, and welcome to this week's episode of the Wrestling with Nerds podcast. And we are talking about 1990s Survivor Series. Joining me, as always, we'll start with the other half of J&J Security. What's up, TJ?
Not a whole lot, AJ. You?
Outside of being an idiot playing with a dog and hurting my foot, nah, I'm pretty good. Pretty good. A lot of pain.
I love how you had to add the dog to make it an excuse.
Well, I was playing with the dog. Not my dog. My dog I would probably have ended up accidentally kicking. But let's go to the wrestling
Never mind.
You kick my dog. Let's go to the wrestling guru, Ryan. What's up, dude?
What's up, guys?
So you picked 1990 Survivor Series. What about it drew your attention? Because I know there's a certain, one over my shoulder here.
Would you stop acknowledging the tribal chief who isn't here yet?
That's that guy.
Yeah. I chose 1990 because when I was a kid, this was one of my favorite ones. And I think after rewatching it again for about the 18,000th time, I have realized that I may have loved the gimmick idea of this more than the actual pay-per-view. Yeah, we do get the debut of Kane the Undertaker. As some of you might not know, his original name was Kane the Undertaker for a very short 2-week span, and then by the time this pay-per-view rolled around, they just went with Undertaker. But
the ham hocks on that guy.
But yeah, this pay-per-view always stood out to me as a kid as one of my favorites. Interesting story is I always wanted this as a VHS tape. I used to have a bunch of wrestling pay-per-views, and this was the only one I didn't have. So my mom ran an auction house when I was younger, and she had a guy come in that had a bunch of recorded tapes, and he said some of them are wrestling. Well, I got them, and I never went through them all. And I needed to record something. I forget what I was recording, but I picked up a blank tape, threw it in, and started recording what I needed. Rewound it back to watch it to find out that it was this pay-per-view on a blank tape, and I recorded over 3/4 of this pay-per-view with what I needed to record. So I absolutely hated myself for it, because I rewound it back and started playing it, and next thing you know, it was just the opening for Survivor Series. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I started watching it, and I'm like, oh no, this is 1990 Survivor Series. And I was like, I wonder how long into this I recorded. Yep. Literally right after the first match is over, it cuts to what I recorded. I was so pissed. But
You must have been really happy when the network came around, huh?
Yeah. I was happy when the network came around because I could watch whatever they wanted me to watch. Because I mean, we're working on 9 years of the network, and there's still not everything on there, which pisses me off more than anything.
I mean, who knows how many more years we're gonna have the network on Peacock.
Well, I'm still waiting on Hulk Hogan's debut in WCW on Saturday night, and we're in fucking 1993 on that.
Yeah.
But this pay-per-view always stood out to me, but then the more and more I watch it, the more and more I realize it's not a good pay-per-view in any stretch of the imagination, except for maybe a few spots.
I did
But
like
yeah,
the gimmick. I do like the gimmick of the Survivor Series, and I wish we could get something back to that.
oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with the whole Survivor Series pay-per-view, like the concept of the 4-on-4, or like the earlier ones were 5-on-5. They were the whole concept was awesome because everybody's stories interacted with each other. It wasn't just a random group of four and a random group of four against each other. Like like for instance, behind me you see the match card. The Hulkamaniacs was Bossman, Tugboat, and Duggan versus the natural disasters of Earthquake, Haku, Barbarian, and Dino. Dino and Hacksaw were feuding. Uh, it was supposed to be Rick Rude in the Haku spot, but Rick Rude left at SummerSlam, so then Haku got that spot.
Hmm.
Earthquake had been put Hogan out of action on the Brother Love show. Tugboat was the guy that came in and did the basically the mailing list where he wanted fans to send Hulk Hogan get well cards, which was basically WWE's ploy to get your address so they could send you the catalog so you'd buy shit. That's what that whole thing was. Bruce Pritchard said it on his podcast. All that was to get addresses so they could send catalogs out. And then Bossman and Barbarian are feuding. So that works. That I mean it wasn't just four random people. There was story between the teams. That's what made early Survivor Series work. Later on, we just lost it when it was just like Raw versus SmackDown. It just wasn't as fun as far as the cohesiveness.
I mean, I can remember a couple, at least one Raw versus SmackDown where it was like I invade your show, they invade back. They made it like
Yeah,
a good month and a half feud before we got to that Survivor Series. So I thought those were cool. But I really enjoyed how each one of these matches, the sole survivor went into the main event. That that was cool.
yeah. This is the only pay per view that does this. This is the only one. The 1990 Survivor Series is the only one where they teased this ultimate match of survival where there was gonna have sole survivors, and I think they did that for a reason. The opening contest of this match has this show has Warrior on it. He's the WWF champion. He's supposed to be the top guy. They put Hogan on mid, but who were they in the show with?
Yep.
Can't you see what I mean? They had to come up with a way that Hogan and Warrior were both at the end of the show. Because at the end of the day, Hogan must pose. Because even Warrior being WWE champion was not popular than Hogan without the belt. But you can't take your champion back in these days. Nowadays they don't give a shit. But you can't take your champion and have another guy outshining as at the end of the night. So that's why you got both Hogan and Warrior at the end of the show. Spoiler alert. But Hogan and Warrior at the end of the show together. So then they can't tell, well, who's getting the pop? Well, they're both out there. They're both getting the pop.
So, Ryan, how do you want to do this episode, pal? Do you want to break down the matches or you want to do our favorite matches?
We can. I mean, the breakdown of the matches are easy because they're quick matches. I mean, we don't have to do the eliminations. I mean, our opening contest was the Warriors, which is the Ultimate Warrior, Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich,
Mm-hmm.
and the Legion of Doom versus Mr. Perfect and Demolition, which at this time the Demolition was the three-man crew because this is the end of Demolition, so to speak, with Axe, Smash, and Crush. Axe is towards the end of his career, well, the end of his WWE run, I should say. Um, he's not gone. He's gone not long after this. It always disappointed me with the Demolition Legion of Doom. Like there wasn't a big enough feud with these two. Um, I'm a WWF guy through and through, so like Demolition is who I was introduced to first, and I know they get a lot of wrath for being a knockoff Road Warrior,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, Demolition was first. I saw Demolition before I saw Legion of Doom or the Road Warriors. So Demolition to me is the original team and the LOD are the knockoff team. That's just how I've always seen it. And I've never really The only similarities is the face paint and their style of wrestling. I mean, I know that's a lot of what goes into a character, but that's about it. That's where it ends. I mean, if you look at Axe, Smash, and Crush, they're not really muscular. Like, they don't look like Hulk. I mean, you guys can agree with me on this. Hulk looks like a jacked up monster,
Yeah.
and an animal weighs 300 and some pounds and is solid as a rock. That was kind of the difference with me in those. Um, I will point out, and I point out to you guys too, the Warrior team, I kind of felt like it was a slap in the face for both
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Eric and the Legion of Doom. The Ultimate Warrior is the team captain. Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich is, when he was in WCCW, his gimmick name was the Modern Day Warrior. And then you have the Road Warriors. So that the Warriors team makes sense. But then that cocksucker comes out to the ring wearing tights that says the one and only Warrior. Fuck you, dude. If I was there, I mean, I I would have saw it as a slap in the face. I mean, granted these guys are making money; they don't care. But these guys were established by those monikers, and then you call yourself the one only Warrior.
Yep.
Kiss my ass. Especially considering out of
go to hell, do da.
considering out of the four, you're the worst one in the ring. You just happen to have the gimmick of a renegade Indian, which if nobody's ever put those together, I thank Conrad Thompson for pointing that out to me. All the Ultimate Warrior is a renegade Indian. That's all he is. The spiritual thing he talks about in his promos, the gods in the heavens, he's an Indian. That's the whole premise of the Ultimate Warrior character. But I mean, that match, it says for itself. You know the Warrior is going to go over.
Yeah. He has to.
We see the debut over TJ's right shoulder there. The WWF Championship now has a white leather strap. That came from the No Holds Barred movie with Hogan. Warrior is the guy that started doing that with the different colored belt straps. So we get the white one here. I know at Royal Rumble in January we get the blue one when he loses the Slaughter. But I mean, all in all, it's a good match. Mr. Perfect works his ass off only the way Mr. Perfect can.
Yep.
And
that match goes about 14 and a half minutes. But let me just run it down for you. Axe is eliminated by the Ultimate Warrior. Smash, Crush, Hawk, and Animal are all eliminated via disqualification. Texas Tornado is eliminated by Mr. Perfect, and Mr. Perfect is eliminated by Ultimate Warrior, giving Ultimate Warrior the sole survivor, as you mentioned, Ryan.
Yeah.
And I'm a little confused at how both Road Warriors get eliminated. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of them was the legal man, right?
I don't think either one of them. This pay-per-view is weird because we saw it in like 4 of these matches where, like, the meat and potatoes of the matches, somebody gets counted out that wasn't even in the ring.
Like, it's just, it was kind of awkward for me. I'm like, what? Why are they eliminated?
Yeah, we went back and watched it a couple times. It's like, I don't think there was a tag.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it to our next match. The $1 Million Team, which is DiBiase, the Honky Tonk Man, and Greg the Hammer Valentine with a mystery partner, versus the Dream Team of Dusty Rhodes, Coco Beware, Bret Hart, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
This was another coming out for Bret Hart and the Undertaker, I guess.
Yes. Of course, we know the mystery partner there is the Undertaker. He debuts.
DJ, do it again. Go, Roddy Piper.
Look at the ham hocks on that guy.
I got to tell you, I really loved Piper on commentary. I know he had a hip replacement, that's why he was on commentary, but holy shit, is he so good on commentary.
You're not wrong.
No, you're not. And I think the misconception on a lot of people's minds of that was I thought he did great. I enjoyed it as well, but I think a lot of people's misconceptions on that is Roddy only did it for Roddy. Like he only did it to pop himself, and in reality, he entertained everybody with it. Um, you get at that time he was also doing the syndicated show, I think Superstars. Um, and then later on, the following year, it's him, Savage, and McMahon do star or Superstars,
Mhm.
and that was entertaining. Um,
Like he could have had a whole separate career as a broadcaster, as a
Kind of
commentator,
similar to Jesse the Body Ventura, like very similar to that.
or
yeah,
King, or
could you imagine a broadcast booth of Gorilla Monsoon, Roddy Piper on one side being the face color guy, and Jesse being on the other side being the heel color guy? That'd be
oh,
entertaining. It's also like when we get to Rumble, I think it is where we get we get Piper on one side of Gorilla and Bobby the Brain Heenan on the other. That's hilarious because like the whole damn show, all Piper calls Bobby the Brain Heenan the whole time boob.
So
But
let's get into this second match. It's the $1 million team versus the Dream Team. You mentioned everybody in it, Ryan, but how do you felt like this match kind of flowed? Because you mentioned it was the coming out while we were watching of Bret Hart. How do you think it showcased Bret Hart in this match?
Brett was definitely the worker of this match. If not, Brett was the worker of the night off of just this match. Um, he worked with everybody on the other side. If you trivia alert, if anybody ever asks you who the first guy on pay per view the Undertaker worked with, it's Bret the Hitman Hart.
Yep.
Shocking alert, but it's Bret the Hitman Hart. We get the Undertaker here. He had already done some tapings for Superstars or All American at this point. I think for like 2 weeks. So he'd been seen. He had been gone by. This is when he was going by Kane the Undertaker. Uh, Oddly enough, it changes. They just go Undertaker. Then they recycle the Kane name later on when his brother comes back from the dead. Um, Undertaker here is still learning what the Undertaker character is. We've seen the documentaries, we've heard the interviews with him. He didn't quite know what the Undertaker character was yet. Was he a dead man? He's supposed to be a Western Undertaker, basically, is what the character's supposed to be. But like me as a kid, this this Undertaker struck fear in me. I like you'll see it in later shows we do of this time frame. Like they made a point to put the camera on the kids when he walked out because the fear of God were in these kids when this man
Yeah, no
walked out the
shit.
Well,
ring.
like the purple around his eyes. I mean, it was just like, what the hell is this?
Like
Yeah,
What am I looking at here?
yeah.
we were
What Piper,
we were
Piper,
watching it. We were
Piper
watching it,
said,
and
this
that place
guy.
was quiet. So
Piper said
quiet.
this guy needs some sleep. He looks like he's been awake for quite a while. Um, the one thing I always remember as a kid, and I don't know why I remember this, and I think it's just one that was in my own head or somebody had put in my head of this, but I always thought the gimmick was the gloves had powers. Like his gloves would when he would choke people in the corner, the concept was is he was taking their power with his gloves when he would choke them. Because if you ever listen, I don't know why. Trust me, it's just things that Fry thinks about or does when he was a kid. But
Wrestling
like
guru things.
when he would when he would choke somebody in the corner, you would hear him breathe, and he would breathe through his teeth. So it made a sound that was unique, and I always thought that has to be like because being like me as a kid at this age, this is still real to me. So like
Real to me,
he's
damn
really
it.
a dead guy. I mean, that's the concept. So like the idea was he was the Undertaker. He was taking from them, so he took their powers from them
Yeah.
through his gloves, and it went in the urn. After Paul Bear shows up, and you figure out his powers are in his urn, my thought process in my head was he took their powers out through his gloves, choking them, and it went in the urn. I know it's weird. It's a
Yeah,
kid fantasy concept, but if you think about it, it
it
works.
doesn't. Yeah, and I mean, it kind of would have played in too when they had the second Undertaker.
Yeah,
His gloves wouldn't have been, the powerful ones. He was just a fake.
yeah. So in my head, that's what I always thought of the Undertaker. This Undertaker, I didn't care for after this Undertaker, to be honest with you. This Undertaker scared the living shit out of me. Then when it gets to the purple taker and everything, it just starts getting more of like the goth phantom stuff. And then like I liked the ministry taker because it was kind of a new gen of this Undertaker. And then everybody loves American Badass because it's a completely different Undertaker character. But um this match is an awesome match if you're a Bret Hart fan. He works with everybody. Him and DiBiase, I told you both this. If you want to take a segment of a match or two guys to show somebody to say what was wrestling like in the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
watch this 3 minute, 4 minute match between DiBiase and Bret Hart at the end of this thing. It is perfect. Bret tricks DiBiase into thinking he blew his knee out, hops up and puts him in a cradle, just trying to pick up the win.
Yeah.
It made it fun for me watching this back those 3 or 4 minutes. It made me remember why I love professional wrestling and what part of professional wrestling I like. And it's that right there. I could go back and watch that all over again. Would I want a different outcome? Yeah. DiBiase's the top guy at this point. Bret and Jim are still a tag team at this point. You're not going to put the tag team guy over. It made sense for DiBiase to go over. It's noted in the pay-per-view that this is the day after Bret loses one of his brothers. Dean passed away the day before. I believe he had some kind of kidney disease or kidney cancer of some sort. I believe that's what it's called. And then it was funny because TJ's like, "How many kids are in that family?" Well, TJ, there's like 13 of
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of heart.
They're
It's
in
a lot of
Can-
heart, bud.
They're in
them.
Canada with nothing to do in the winter.
Those Calgary winters are long and cold, buddy. So them is Stu and Helen kept it warm, baby.
God bless their hearts.
But it's a great match. Everybody knows about this match. I don't think we really need to run down it. Taker eliminates Coco with a really bad tombstone.
Thought
He
killed
gets his
him.
leg. He got that, and he gets his legs like tangled up in the rope.
Yeah,
It was just really weird.
He's at the infancy stage of this Undertaker character. He's just glad he's not in the big giant egg.
Oh my
Um,
god.
DiBiase, Honky Tonk Man gets eliminated by Bret, or no, Neidhart
Jim.
eliminates him. Neidhart gets eliminated by DiBiase.
Yep.
This is the part that makes no sense, and this is where it gets confusing for people. You know how Curtis Axel is the longest guy still in the Royal Rumble? He hasn't been eliminated since like 2015.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it is, T?
Something like that, dude. He's still waiting to get tossed out of the ropes on that deal.
Okay, the original Undertaker is still waiting to get eliminated from this Survivor Series.
It said
Because-
it says count out, but
Because
he was never in the match.
But yeah, because he eliminates Dusty, which Dusty's at the end of his run. He eliminates Dusty. He tags out to Greg Valentine. Dusty starts beating up Bruce Pritchard or Brother Love. Taker starts beating up Dusty in the aisleway, and Undertaker gets counted out.
Yeah, conventional wisdom.
I think somebody forgot that they wasn't supposed to tag in. Could be the thing there. So yeah, Undertaker gets counted out. Counted out. Greg
Air
gets
quote.
eliminated. Greg gets eliminated by Bret, and then we get that awesome sequence with Bret and DiBiase. Bret comes off the ropes with a crossbody. DiBiase shifts his weight, rolls over, doesn't grab the tights, puts him in a perfect cradle, pins Bret 1, 2, 3, and he moves on. I like this match. The Taker part gives it. I love the ending of the last two. I put this match over the first match if we want to do it that way. This match is better than the first one.
Okay.
The next match we get.
So before before we continue, after about the first 25 minutes of the show, gotta plug our own shit here. Go check the Nerds Doing Nerd Things podcast. Check out all our episodes. Go and check our merch store. We have some awesome merches. I'm leaving the breast cancer awareness t-shirts up for a little bit longer so people can get their fill of those. All the proceeds from them do go to the Susan G. Komen Fund for Breast Cancer Research. Go check it out. And appreciate you guys from watching. Hit that like button and subscribe. Ryan, continue.
Shameless plug over.
Let's go with one of you two. Let's talk about the next match.
So I really was surprised about the Visionaries and the Vipers. I really was. It was action packed for me. But the thing is, I was not expecting an 18-minute clean sweep. Like, absolute clean sweep.
I don't know if anybody really was, AJ.
This is the first one in Survivor Series history.
And they say that, but you get everything in this match. You get the Rockers, you get Jimmy Snuka, which surprisingly was in boots. I always thought he was barefoot. And you get Jake the Snake, and of course he brings out the Snake.
Well, yeah,
it was
the snake.
It was a wee tiny one. It wasn't a big Damien. Damien went on a diet.
Dude, that Damien, when he started running to the back with the snake, you could see Damien curling up. Just Jake Roberts' leg.
I think it's the promo before the match. They're in the shower and he has the snake by the head and he's just shaking the shit out of it. I'm like, that snake didn't make it out of Connecticut alive.
Speaking of Connecticut, this is at the Hartford Civic Center, which is now the XL Center. Ryan and myself have both been there, and it is basically untouched since.
I was gonna say it's probably still the same shithole in there now as it was in 1990.
The only thing difference is the gigantic Tron hanging above the ring and ice and everything. It's the only thing that's different.
The lobby's nice.
No, it's not.
The outside thing before we go into the forum.
The
XL thing, that was nice, I guess. You put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig.
Polish a turd, it's still a turd.
Jesus, boys.
You make it look good on the outside, and then inside you're like, oh god, it's still a dump.
At least the hockey team that plays in there is pretty good. But Marty Jannetty gets beat by the Warlord. 5 minutes. Jimmy Snuka gets pinned by Rick Martel at the 9.5 minute mark. Shawn Michaels by Paul Roma at the 15:40, and Jake via countout. That's when he's running towards the back, chasing everybody, and it is a clean sweep.
That was Martel gets the MVP for this because Martel's not tagged into the match. Of course, we know the story between the Visionaries and the Vipers. Martel is a model. He has a
the perfume.
It's a cologne. I forget what the hell that thing's called. It's a thing.
Yeah,
but
it was weird.
It's called Arrogance. What had happened is weeks before this, Jake was on the Brother Love show, was after Piper's Pit, but it's basically the predecessor to Ms. TV, Cutting Edge, the Grayson Waller Effect. That's what it was. It was an interview segment. And Martel comes out and sprays the snake bag, and then turns around and sprays Jake in the face with it. Jake goes blind. The match, he's got the contact in for the one eye, doesn't have any color in it.
That was a good.
Yeah, it was a good effect, a very cool effect.
He's not like Rey Mysterio where he lost an eye, air quote.
No. So that's, I mean, again, like we said before about the matches' consistence between them. Martel and Jake are feuding. The Rockers are just coming back after Shawn was off for knee surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote that story as the Power and Glory, which, as I told you two, one of my underrated tag teams. These guys could have been way higher on the list of tag teams in the WWF than they were. They were fantastic. I'm not a big Paul Roma fan, but him with Hercules worked. Him with the Four Horsemen did not work. They had one of the best finishing moves as a tag team I've ever seen. Although here on the show, they're on the pay per view, they're a little late on it. But when they hit that thing right, I've been meaning to show you guys. Literally what they call it a powerplex. Hercules gets you in the top rope in one corner and suplexes you out, and Roma splashes you from an opposite corner. Well, they used to be able to time that thing so right that literally you would hit the mat, and on your bounce up off the mat, Roma would be splashing you. Like, it was almost perfect every time. It was very cool move. And you get Warlord and Snuka, which I'm not sure if they were really feuding, but it's nice to see Snuka still there at 60 and not convicted of murder yet, facing the Warlord. Warlord is another one of those guys that big giant guy, but he lacked the charisma to be a top guy.
Dude, he was monstrous.
You get him in Bulldog in a year later, and that's a fantastic sight to see, is those two guys. If you think Sheamus and Gunther were two manly men slapping meat, Bulldog and Warlord in the ring together was just big men beating the shit out of each other. But yeah, we get the clean sweep. So that makes it, heading into the Soul Survivor match coming up. As of right now, it's the Ultimate Warrior, because they're going to put the faces with the faces and the heels with the heels. So it's the Ultimate Warrior versus DiBiase, Rick Martel, the Warlord, and Power and Glory. So it's 1-on-5 at this time. And then we move into the next one. T, do you want to run through the next one?
I can.
Oh,
God, stop it, AJ.
What? Just trying to give you a little, taste of
The
what's
next. Jesus Christ. It's worse every time he opens his mouth. I didn't think it was possible.
Really?
Love you, AJ.
You've known me for how long, and you didn't know what kind of rabbit hole I can dive down?
Oh, evidently one in the yard, the dog that takes out your foot.
It's a dog.
Love you. Anyway, so our next contest on hand would be, oh God, don't fail me now, Wikipedia. The Hulkamaniacs versus the Natural Disasters. Now, these are big men in this one. Not like,
it's Baby
big,
Huey.
It's not like big men in the sense of big meat, men slapping the meat kind of thing. These are just some big boys. Like, I might have been smaller than a few of them. That's saying something. We have Haku, if I remember right. Jim Duggan, Dino Bravo, Big Boss Man, Tugboat, big dude. Earthquake, bigger dude. The Barbarian and Hogan. Obviously, Hulk's Hope. He's gonna be your star of this match, if you will. I mean, again, we're in the middle of Hulkamania. Do you expect anything less? But I mean, AJ, do you have our match time?
Total match is 14:50, but Haku gets eliminated by BBM at 3:15. Big Boss Man.
I was gonna say, please clarify that, or people are gonna start Googling things on websites we don't need to talk
about. Jim Duggan is eliminated by disqualification. Dino
That
Bravo.
dreaded disqualification. That dude will sneak up anywhere. It's like vacant. That dude's been the world champion like 12 times.
That's an understatement. Dino Bravo eliminated by Hulk Hogan at 8 minutes. Big Boss Man eliminated by Earthquake at 9:08. Tugboat and Earthquake both eliminated by double countout. Another one, Brian?
Serious countout thing.
No, these two beat the hell out of each other to the back. This one made sense.
And then the Barbarian gets pinned by Hulk Hogan at 14:49. And Hulk Hogan goes to the Ultimate, whatever it's called. What is that match called?
Because he is the sole survivor.
The ultimate match of survival.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, this match I let you two cover it because you knew I was gonna take the lead because it's a Hogan match. Um, this
There's multiple Hogan matches.
this is why I saved the best for last.
Do I need to go get the? Do I need
You
to go
get
get the wrestling buddy?
fuck you. Uh, we get Duggan and Bossman and Earth or Tugboat and Hogan, all four awesome ring entrance musics. Can we not agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Tugboat coming to the ring with what sounds like a sailboat is fucking awesome. And by the way, to anybody that doesn't know, Tugboat, he later becomes Typhoon. He ends up tagging with Earthquake. They become the Natural Disaster Tag Team. Also, Tugboat may or may not be the guy that fell through a wall in WCW. You know, the Shockmaster
Shockmaster.
The one
fell
with
through a
the
wall.
fucking Star Wars helmet.
Yeah.
Storm Stars was it Stormtrooper?
Yep.
He's
Yeah.
one of the Star
Stormtrooper.
Wars guys. All I call him as, and I don't know him personally. I don't know Fred personally, but I do have him on Facebook, and I comment back to a lot of his comments on his stuff. But he is the famous Uncle Fred. If you don't know who Uncle Fred is,
I remember the story.
if you ever watched on the network Legends of Wrestling, it was a roundtable show. It's fantastic. On that show for that panel was Dusty Rhodes and a few other ones. I can't think off the top of my head. But Dusty is in WCW when Shockmaster debuts. And Dusty was telling the story that he had called home after the show and he was talking to his wife and he said Cody had a bunch of friends over watching Clash of Champions, which is where Stormtrooper falls through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And like Cody has said in many interviews, he wasn't smartened up to the business. So they're watching it with a bunch of friends. Shockmaster falls through the wall. The helmet comes off. He stands up, puts the helmet back on, and Cody looks at his mom and goes, I think that was Uncle Fred. He's married to Dusty's sister, or was married to Dusty's sister. So Cody looks at his mom and goes, I think that was Uncle Fred. And Michelle didn't know what to say. So it's just one of those stories that always stuck to me with Dusty. Is like, I think that was Uncle Fred. So to me, he's Uncle Fred. When I comment on his Facebook post, I call him Uncle Fred. He's a very, very fun guy to talk to on Facebook because he will conversate with you if he has time. But Tugboat has always been one of my. He's one of the sentimental favorites when it comes to the wrestling business. He was a super sweet, nice guy. Was over in Florida before he came to WWF. But this match, I mean, it is what it is. You knew what the ending was going to be. Only Hogan can be the sole survivor of this match, and I don't blame it
It was
because I
still
mean,
very entertaining of a match.
yeah, and to be, I mean, I would put this of the four we've seen so far. I would probably put this at number 2 as far as matches.
Okay.
Maybe number 3. It would be hard pressed for me to put this above the million dollar team and the dream team match. But I would probably put it right under that with the Visionaries and the Vipers being 3, and then Warrior and Perfect Team being 4. I hate to say that because Mr. Perfect's such a worker.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I would put it. And then we get the next match we get is the popcorn match, so to speak.
All right. If that's the case.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm not walking.
Come on, we want to see the limp. If you ain't limping, it didn't happen.
If I ain't limping, I ain't trying.
We want to see if you look like McMahon with two
So-
torn quads.
So then we get the next match is the Alliance versus the something I forget.
It's behind
the
your
Alliance
shoulder.
versus the Mercenaries. That's what it is. The Mercenaries. We get heel Sergeant Slaughter. He started his Iraqi turncoat gimmick. This is after being GI Joe for 10 years.
And
Um,
this takes place right before Desert Storm.
we're on the
During?
cusp. We're on the
Yeah.
cusp of the final invasion. There's a lot of things going on in the Middle East at this point. Slaughter, for people to kind of clarify, Slaughter took the GI Joe deal because he made a bunch of money off of it.
Hmm.
Part of that deal was he didn't wrestle anymore. So for almost 10 years, I think it was an 8-year deal or something like that, he didn't wrestle for the WWF. I think he may have done a little bit for AWA at that time. But he was the spokesperson for GI Joe. I think TJ can elaborate more on that because I think he watched GI Joe. I did
Well,
not.
it's he was just more of like they had action figures that featured him, and he was a real life person that people recognized. It was one of those crossover things, if anything.
Did they
Fryer, you took
did
the
they
real world into the show.
did they not have him as one of the characters in the cartoon as well?
They did because they made that was when GI Joes were actual action figures versus I don't even know if they do that anymore. And he was one of the action figures, but like I said, it was like a real life crossover thing of like oh hey, we've got this guy from wrestling, now he's a GI Joe kind of thing, and it's just Sergeant Slaughter. He's got a pretty freaking epic name.
Did you play with GI Joes?
Not as much as Transformers, but yes. But GI
No,
Joe and Transformers also cross. So
do you know what GI Joes were for me?
the guys that lost to your wrestling figures.
Yeah, they were the bigger ones. They fit theirs in the rubber. The LJN wrestling figures were the same size, so they just became counterparts because I could never afford all of them. So like certain ones became wrestlers that I couldn't get, and that's just how I used them. I mean, I used to use my grandmother's watches for championship belts because I could never get belts. Uh,
I mean, hey, you do what you got to do when
yeah,
you're a kid with
but yeah,
imagination.
that's what GI Joes became for me, where they were the victims to my wrestling figures. AJ, did you play with GI Joes?
I really didn't have them. I was more of a Hot Wheels kind of person and all that stuff. I didn't really play with action
Well,
figures.
not
AJ's not old enough, right?
I thought about that. You're not old enough for GI Joes. GI Joes were kind of a thing of the past by the time you were born.
Yeah, we're talking about like 95, 96 when I
Yeah,
started getting to stuff.
GI Joes were totally gone by then.
They were too many small pieces for kids to choke on.
Yeah, they were like the Polly. They ended up being like Polly Pockets for boys. Don't ask me how I know Polly Pocket. I remember the commercial as
They
a kid.
actually had a Polly Pocket for
Polly
boys. I'm just
Pocket,
saying.
if
I don't
it's in
remember it was
your
like Max
pocket. Polly
Dangerous or
Pocket.
something.
Max Danger was his name, or Max Fury.
That
I
was
had
the
I had that as a kid because it was like a haunted kid thing. I had those. They were cool.
Mhm.
But hey, we're getting nostalgic here, so on Wrestling with Nerds, we can do that. Anyhow, while we talk about this match is already over with. It's the popcorn match.
You could see everybody walk into the bathroom too.
Uh, uh, the more puzzling for this match is if you put these two teams together, which they're right here on my thing, and say who wins. I don't think people would have figured out who was going to win. I think you would think Slaughter was going to come out on top, but he doesn't.
No, he is the last person eliminated though.
I'm still confused by the teams. I mean,
Let's
I
let's run
know
down let's run down the teams real quick. Okay, the Cold War part has ended, so Nikolai Volkov is now sided as a good guy with America.
so weird.
They're coming off of him and Duggan were feuding America versus Russia.
Mhm.
And then when that alliance agreement happened, they became partners. Slaughter comes in and everybody thinks is going to be Mr. G.I. Joe. Turns out he's an Iraqi sympathizer and calls America weak because of their agreement with Russia. So that's how this whole thing starts where Slaughter becomes an Iraqi turncoat. Borzukov doesn't turn with Nikolai. He stays heel, which because they were a tag team. The big ball headed, That dude's head is big enough that a fucking 5-gallon bucket could fit on it and be tight. That dude's head was huge.
That
So
dude's
then you get
huge.
the mercenaries. It's kind of a pun on it if you think about it, because you get the Iraqi turncoat, the Russian guy, and then the 2 Japanese guys. Mercenaries, kamikazes, same.
Yakuza, like what?
Yeah. And then you get the alliance, which is Nikolai, Tito Santana, and Bushwhackers. I feel like there was a injury replacement here. I think there was something else planned. I don't think I for some reason I think and I it's really hard to go back and
You mean
find
to
this.
tell me that this wasn't planned all along, Fry?
I think what I feel like is I don't think Duggan was originally supposed to be on the Hulkamaniacs. I could be wrong, but I don't think that was
Duggan
the
would make
original
sense to
plan.
be on the Alliance.
And I think Duggan was supposed to be in the Alliance, and they didn't do it that way. Um, but I mean, it's just kind of a throwaway match to kind of get another guy on. They put another guy on Hogan and Warriors team is basically what this match was.
Yeah.
And it
And they
had
give
its
it,
moment, coming to the ring.
and they give it to the guy on both teams that's probably most deserving of it. Tito Santana is criminally underrated for his run. Him and one other person are the only guys to ever go through their entire career as a babyface. He was never a heel.
Doesn't
Do
happen much.
do I ask the question of who was the other person? Do we have any answers?
Who was never a heel?
Never a heel in his entire career. He's a former NWA World Champion. He's a former WWF Intercontinental Champion. Okay, it's Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Wouldn't have pulled it, but makes perfect sense.
They're like one of the only 2 guys that went through their entire career as a babyface.
So
I mean,
weird.
even we just talked about him. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was a heel in the UWF and in Mid South, and eventually at the very end of the shitty era of WCW because he turned Canadian. Yes. Jim Duggan turned Canadian at the end of WCW. But anyhow, we get through this match. Tito wins because Slaughter gets disqualified.
Slaughter had a big night.
And this makes sense because what are they building to? The next pay-per-view is Royal Rumble. The next pay-per-view, Slaughter gets a World Championship match against Warrior and wins. This is the funniest thing about wrestling. Wrestling gets flacked for being, just wrestling in general gets flacked. But like if you can remember these dates of events, wrestling occurred during some of the most historical events in our country. The Royal Rumble takes place in January 19th, I think it is, of 1991. While we're at the Royal Rumble in Miami Beach, Iraq invades Kuwait. Desert Storm launches the night of the Royal Rumble. Kind of like, we end Extreme Rules with John Cena with a win, and then he tells the audience that Bin Laden's been killed. 9/11 happens, and SmackDown is the first widely grouped organized event to occur after 9/11. WWE and wrestling in general is always on the forefront of some of the most historical moments in our country. And it's funny to think about how little credit it gets for some of the stuff that it does. But moving on, we get to the Ultimate Match of Survival. Oh no, wait. Before we get to the Ultimate Match of Survival, they gotta hatch that big ass ostrich egg back there.
And have a dancing competition with the Pink.
As we all know, they've been teasing this egg for weeks that it's gonna hatch. We've heard the stories that the Undertaker thought he was going to become the Eggman and have to shave his head and his eyebrows and all that stuff and become the Eggman. Thank
Let's not
God
think
that
it's
didn't
Gene
happen.
Oakland.
Also, there's also the rumors that the egg possibly could have some kind of like Nature Boy in it. Was also a possibility for what rumors were flying around. But instead, the egg starts heating up and it starts cracking. And TJ, what do we get out of the egg?
The gobbledygooker.
And what did you call him?
I don't remember now.
Some chicken.
I don't. Can I say this on stream? Not even sure anymore. Just thing was just dumb. It was like the dumbest. I don't even remember. Honestly, it was in the moment.
The idea for the gobbledygooker was to take off of the San Diego chicken. Do you guys remember the San Diego chicken?
No.
Do you remember T? You got to remember the San Diego chicken. The opponent for baseball games would be running around and always playing pranks on baseball players and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I get it.
He was pretty popular in the mid and early and mid 90s.
Sounds like the
It
Philly
was
fanatic.
it well it would basically was the Philly fanatic, only it was a fucking chicken. Was what the hell kind of was that a turkey call? Interesting note. I don't know if it was him in the costume that night,
Pete Rose.
but see there, that's the San Diego chicken. That's not the
Okay.
gobbledygooker that Pete Rose comes out in. That's the San Diego chicken. But the gobbledygooker wrestled matches after this, like very shortly. From I don't know if he was in it now, but it was Hector Guerrero was the gobbledygooker, which is Eddie's brother.
That thing was just so
One of
goofy.
Eddie's oldest brothers. But
And
yeah, we get the gobbledygooker and Gene Oakland dancing in the ring, and then you get the funny ass spot of Gene tripping over the rope and busting his ass. It's like, oh, you know damn well he had to have an extra gin and tonic after that one.
And the freaking crowd. This thing hatches, and it was like they were hyped for it, and you literally hear them go, cricket, cricket, cricket.
And the crowd
cricket.
goes silent.
Dude,
Yeah.
mild wasn't even the name for it. It was just
You figure they went from the popcorn match to all right, everybody get out.
just wow.
One of the things we touched on when we watched this, well, I'm sorry, touched on might have been the wrong wording, but the one thing we all were in agreement on when we first watched this, there's some interesting faces in the background of this show. AJ, do you want to touch on who might be around the ringside during this match?
Shane O'Mac. A
Yeah.
very, very young Shane. He plays the referee outside the ring, escorting the people to the back.
God
Yeah.
bless his heart.
You want to know something interesting?
What?
He had a name, and it wasn't Shane McMahon.
Nope.
What was it?
Shane Stevens was Shane McMahon's ring referee name.
I
Why?
feel like if when you on AJ's screen, I feel like you can see his ear in the bottom right corner, below Dusty's ass. Like follow Hebner's fingers down.
I think that's a fan.
You
It's on
sure?
the other side. It's on the other side of the guardrail.
It doesn't
Either
wanna pick it
way.
up.
Either way. No,
I mean,
it
And
might
then,
be.
we also get Brother Love, who is Bruce Pritchard, one of my favorite podcast people, one of my favorite wrestling people in general. He's here as Brother Love. Brother Love is supposed to be a knock on Robert Stilton, the televangelist from Texas, is where the Brother Love gimmick comes from. He
That dude
doesn't
was
talk.
more red than Brock Lesnar midway through
He
a
doesn't.
match.
He doesn't talk about the book of God because they can't talk about religion. So his is the book of love. And AJ, just because I love you doesn't mean I have to like you.
Well, shit.
Well, like Bruce Pritchard is a key part of this early '90s WWF, from the Brother Love show, which basically every angle that was an angle started on the Brother Love show, to managing the Undertaker, which the whole premise of this was supposed to be Bruce's yin with the Undertaker's yang. It was supposed to be happiness and love, and then darkness. That's the whole premise of this character. Um, and I mean, it's just fun to go back and see some of this stuff. We get into the final match, the Ultimate Survivor match. It's DiBiase, Martel, Roma, Hercules, and the Warlord versus Tito, Hogan, and Warrior. I kind of found it funny on the entrances. Hogan's the first one out for his team. Then it's Tito. Then it's Warrior, so that the Warrior can get his final pop. I did find it interesting that Warrior has all new face paint, all new ring tights, but still wearing the same shitty silver boots. Um, right off the bat, not even 30 seconds into the match, Tito eliminates Warlord after a distraction from Hulk.
Yep.
Hits him with the flying forearm. Tito's then eliminated by DiBiase by pinfall. Roma's then
This was a
eliminated by
very fast
Hogan.
match.
It's kind of funny when you look at the eliminations because Hogan eliminates Roma. Martel just walks out on him because he's a snake in the grass. Hogan pins DiBiase. Warrior eliminates Hercules. So Hogan eliminates two people. Warrior eliminates the last guy, and they both become the sole survivors.
And they're
So
both
again,
trying to get their moments in the ring at the end.
yeah, so Hogan does more work, and then Warrior must pose at the end of the show. I, if you can tell, I'm not a Warrior fan. I never was a Warrior fan. To me, was trying to be a carbon copy of Hulk, just with a little bit more frizz, a little more pop, with his arm tassels and his makeup and all that stuff. But it's still Hulk Hogan 100% for me.
Dude, I found it difficult to understand Warrior sometimes when he was like and started
Yeah,
screaming into
I
the
mean,
mic.
He actually mentioned that when we were doing our watch back of this. I think Fry goes at one point after Warriors done talking. Does anybody know what he just actually said?
yeah, like his promos were all over the place. They never really made sense. We've heard the famous ones with him and Hogan at WrestleMania where like he's walking us through a plane that's gonna crash with both of them in it, and he locked the cockpit door. It's like you're a fucking idiot. This doesn't make sense. Whatever. It's just I'm just not a Warrior fan. It's just he's dead. Great, I guess. I don't know. He was an asshole. He's in death. He's probably still an asshole. Just my opinion. I just
no love lost.
I don't like a guy that comes into the business of wrestling not as a wrestling fan and doesn't get any. I don't like a guy that comes into the wrestling business that, yeah, he earned his dues, I guess, in Mid South and stuff, but never respected anybody else in the business and never grew to respect anybody else in the business. I've never once heard an interview with the Warrior where he praised somebody.
Mhm.
The only one I think he may have praised was Randy. And okay, that might be about it. But hell, give me somebody that would talk shit about Randy Savage. Nobody. But anybody else, he talks shit about. My favorite, I never understood that about the guy. He never took anything for granted. He was always about him, and he could care less about anybody else. He didn't care about the ones he was in the ring with. Goldberg gets the stick for being a rough guy and hurting people. I would almost bet you the Warrior hurt more people than Goldberg did. I mean, yes, Warrior or Goldberg may have kicked Brett's head off into the 10th row. To my opinion on that,
I mean,
Brett,
look at Seth
my,
with
my,
Sting.
my well, that when you got a counter to look at. Sting's 56 years old in that
Okay,
match.
Seth and Finn.
Granted, I give you that one, but also, I mean,
That's two
acc-
guys.
accidents happen when you're trying to
And it
do
was the
stuff
same
outside
move.
the ring.
Rich
Yeah, but
Holland's murdered more people than that this year, AJ.
yeah, but Finn's was more because of timing of where they released him because the camera guy was in the way. And Finn was more because he put his arm back to catch the ring barrier and that popped his shoulder out.
Mm.
Sting's was whiplash from hitting the turnbuckle. Granted, Sting probably never took that bump in his life, but also Sting's 56 years old at that point. I mean, my favorite Ultimate Warrior story that anybody ever told is Bobby the Brain Heenan. The Warrior worked with Andre in '89. House shows, everything. Because a part that needs to be told about this part of the business in the '90s, these pay-per-views didn't mean jack shit to the WWF. The revenue from pay-per-views was like a small percentage of income for WWF. WWF made all their money on house shows.
Mm.
That's why you never saw Hogan and Flair on pay-per-view because they sold them in the house shows and they didn't do anything, so they never put it on pay-per-view. Warrior and Andre worked together on the road. And Andre used to love to do a spot. Everybody's seen it. Andre gets clotheslined and he would back in and roll his arms up in the top rope and be caught and he couldn't catch and he couldn't get up.
It looked like King Kong was tied to
Yeah.
barricades.
And Warrior came off and Warrior clotheslined him one night. Or he ducked under Andre and Andre didn't even have time to turn around and Warrior had already drilled him with a clothesline as hard as he could. And it knocked Andre off balance and he fell down and missed the spot. Bobby's on the ringside apron and he's like, all I heard was Andre groan. The next night, same thing. Andre got a little bit step faster, got spun around. Warrior clotheslined him. Down. Boom, he goes again. Third night, Warrior comes off the ropes, goes to turn, hit the rope to come back to Andre. Andre spun around before him and stuck his fist out.
Bang! Pow! See you, bye!
Bobby said the Warrior looked like a font deer. He he drilled Warrior right in the forehead. Warrior's legs went out from underneath of him. His paint chipped, and he hit the ground. And Andre said, "He'll learn." The next night, they do the same spot. Warrior comes off the ropes at a trot and waits for Andre to turn around to clothesline him so Andre can fall back into the ropes. That is by far the best Ultimate Warrior story I've ever heard, and it was by Bobby the Brain Heenan.
The only thing you could have told me was it contacted. It was like a Looney Tune. Just
Well, like you could hear Andre. You could think about that. Andre would let things fester, but then finally, just without a warning, Andre just stuck his fist out, and Warrior drilled it, and he'll learn.
Like a Mini Cooper hitting a semi, man. It was over.
It's just great. But I mean, yeah, we get back to this pay-per-view. I know we got on a tangent, but hell, it's our show. We do what we want.
yeah, it's not like anybody's waiting for TJ.
Yeah, the delicate. I mean, Brett's brother Dean died the day before. We were aware of that. This card, after watching it again, like I said, it's not a good one. There's a lot of countouts. I mean,
A lot of disqualifications. Hold on. Okay, so I'm gonna mix the countouts and disqualifications together.
The only match that doesn't have a countout is the boring match, and it has one disqualification.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 disqualifications and countouts over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches.
Yeah, so a lot of nonsense. I mean, if you look at the match cards, you're like, man, this is really good. It's missing Macho Man or Macho King at this point. He does an interview on the show because he wants to challenge Warrior. But I mean, you don't have. I never understood why Macho's not on this card. I don't know why say that perfect team couldn't have been Warrior. I mean, couldn't have been Macho, Perfect, and two of the members of Demolition, and then against the Warriors, I think that would have made sense.
Yeah.
You're definitely missing Macho out of that. It's just if somebody would ask me what 3 Survivor Series I would want to watch, I usually pick them in a row. I usually pick uh, 88, 89, 90. Those are the 3 that I like watching. I think if I was going to pick my favorite Survivor Series, it's definitely 89. This one is more on the lower end for me now, but it's above the Survivor Series where there's not Survivor Series matches.
Mhm.
That's
I
the thing.
kinda-
I would love to see this concept redone today because there's enough
Thank you.
superstars that it would be done. I think it could be done right and
Yeah.
done well.
I feel like that's what Hunter's going to try to do. I think I've heard concept ideas and I kind of like it where it's supposed to be every other year. Whereas 1 year Survivor Series is War Games, and then the next year it's back to this, and then the following year it's back to War Games. That would be awesome. That would
Mhm.
give a cool concept to a pay per view that of the big 4 really isn't a big 4 anymore. Basically, is what
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really Survivor Series is really the bottom of the big 4 as far as that goes.
As long as they
Because
don't give War Games its own pay per view and make it a
because
gimmick pay per view.
well, you got to think about it this way too. Royal Rumble leads to Mania. So Royal Rumble, you have that Battle Royal, which is awesome. I think 2 of us will agree it's our favorite pay per view. I'm not really sure what TJ's. Okay, all 3 of us.
It's the Rumble's my favorite thing all year.
It's the favorite pay per view. I've never missed a pay per view. I mean, I've never missed a Royal Rumble since I was born, which my first one was 88. I don't remember it, but I was at a viewing of it, I was told. So I've never missed a Royal Rumble. I love that pay per view. But you get Rumble into Mania. Mania goes to SummerSlam. That's how these 4 used to work that way. Survivor Series has always been the one where there's no connection to that run.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, if anything, it was like the start of a tease to lead into Rumble. But
when was King of the Ring traditionally?
King of the Ring was always the month after Mania, but it was only King of the Ring. The King of the Ring pay per view didn't start until '94. The King of the Ring tournament, though, used to go on house shows in the '80s and '90s. That's how Macho Man became Macho King. He had won the King of the Ring. He had beat Duggan, who was King Duggan, to become King of the Ring.
I remember one time Lawler held the King's Court too.
Well, yeah, his show was King's Court. Jerry the King Lawler got his name the King for being the king of wrestling in Memphis. It's the whole purpose of Jerry the King Lawler. But we'll get into him later because I do want to do a whole show on Jerry the King Lawler, what he had done for the business of wrestling in general.
Him and Andy Kaufman.
Oh yes, by far. We had the game a couple of weeks ago where I told you that was my favorite celebrity interaction is Andy Kaufman and Jerry the King Lawler. But granted, what this is and what we're doing is the next 3 weeks is our Survivor Series. Out of give it a 1 to 10. You can use halves and quarters. What do you guys rate this as far as a Survivor Series pay-per-view in general? AJ, you first.
So I love the concept of these matches leading into a big match at the end of the night with all the sole survivors. So the concept of this match of the night, I really, really liked, and like we've said multiple times, wanted it to get back to. But I felt like some of the teams should have had different members on them to make storyline progress a little bit easier. Like you mentioned, Macho Man. And but overall, I thought the matches were fun. Thought there were too many disqualifications, too many countouts. Wish they would have done some more to those matches instead of be like, "Hey, let's kill time. Let's go fight outside and go get counted out or mysteriously counted out." But if we're going out of 5 or out of 10, Ryan,
1 out of 10. We're
One out
gonna
of 10?
compare all 3 of our Survivor Series. We'll take all 3 of our scores. We'll average them together, and then we'll rate the other 2 as we go.
Cool. So I would honestly put this right around a 6. There's a lot to still be desired. There were 2 basically stinker moments. The penultimate match that had, I think it was give me a sec. I got it right here. The Alliance and the Mercenaries, was not a fan of that. And the whole 15 minutes of the gobbledygooker with Gene Okerlund and all that stuff basically took all the air out of the whole arena between that match and the gobbledygooker, and really not a huge fan. But we do get to get back to Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior beating up on DiBiase and team over there. But I don't know. I'll give it a 6. Not a huge one for me, but not a one. So TJ.
For me this one's, it's big on star power, but I think the star power wasn't used right. And like I said, the concept's cool. I think the concept in today's landscape with all the superstars would be phenomenally done, especially with that sole survivor match at the end, because you could pull some rabbits out of the hat, or the chickens out of the eggs.
Think about it. Think about it this way. Think about it this way. If you want to try to tie all 4 big into the same, like we were just talking about, the full circle.
Mm-hmm.
If nowadays you'd have this concept of a pay-per-view, and this is my writing genius guru brain. You have these Survivor Series matches. You have your Ultimate Survivor match. If a team comes down to more than one person, they could have a match. The ultimate Survivor. Don't give them number 30 for the Rumble, because that's been overdone. But they're the number 1 contender and get a World Championship or a WWE Championship match at the Royal Rumble. That would be a cool little tie to make a full circle. But
I like that. But
TJ,
continue.
your score?
7.
Okay, 7.
I like you said, I like the star power. I like the concept. There's just some weird shit.
All right, Ryan, let's hear you, the wrestling guru, break it down and give us your number.
I think for me it's a 7.5. The card itself, like we said, it's laid out where it should be really good, and then it just under delivers. I mean, you got to give it the nostalgic reason of that guy over there debuted. It's a key point on things. We're at the turning point we're at the middle point, so to speak, of the Warrior Championship run, and realizing, hey, stop playing with my ass. My big old fat ass. You can't play with Dusty's ass like that. Jesus. You know when I get back in the locker room, these trunks are coming off and I'm reading the paper butt ass naked, right? Dude, I don't know what you're doing to Hulk Hogan's bicep. I don't know if you're trying to pick his nose.
I was, but trying to figure out what the fuck way to go here.
You were all up in the armpit. Stop acknowledging this tribal chief.
That's the wrong one.
Jesus Christ. But anyhow, the card match laid out should be great, but it doesn't. It underwhelms. You do get the Hogan Warrior pop at the end. Warrior's in the middle of his run. We're finding out that it's not the success that Vince hoped it to be. They're starting to plant the seeds for Hogan to get the belt back, which he only lost because he had to go do movies. You get the awesome segment with Brett and DiBiase. So, I mean, out of pay-per-views, as far as this goes, I'll give this one a 7.5.
Gives us a 6.83 Infinity.
Let's just go with a 6.8.
There you go.
Buzz.
So that's the score for mine. Granted, I'm not looking to win this. This isn't the highest score one. We just picked one. We each picked one, and I figured with me being the old school guy, I'd pick an older one.
You not trying to win something? I don't believe it.
I gotta keep you guys. I gotta keep you in the game a little bit. You both will give up if I just keep beating you.
I don't think we'd give up.
But so I mean, granted, I mean when I called this pay per view, I was still thinking it was as good as what I remembered watching it back. This time when I really sat down and paid attention again, I realized it's not that great of a card, or great of matches because of the way the matches play out. Like I say, I think I like this one just for the gimmick.
Mhm.
But next up will be AJ. Is that what we went with? I think that's what we went with. AJ was next, then it's TJ.
Well, I know the one I'm picking is going to be very, very controversial because a lot of it kind of died on arrival because a lot of superstars from the purchasing of WCW did not come with the crew from WCW. So a lot of it was cool. We're gonna get Goldberg, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall. They decided to stay home and take their money, which good for them. They wanted to stay home, grab their money. But I love the concept of winner take all. I'm going with 2001's Survivor Series because I really do
Also,
like that 5-on-5 match. I really do
and
like that
I
5-on-5 match.
if I'm not mistaken, on that card we get some unification matches as well. We get Edge versus Test to unify the Intercontinental and the WCW United States Championship.
Yep.
The idea was there is whichever team wins, that would become the mid card belt.
Mm-hmm.
We do get that unification. We get Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy, I think, or is Rob in the Survivor Series match? That might be
Uh,
the invasion. That
Rob
might be
Van
the
Dam is in the winner take all match.
yeah. I was thinking the invasion pay per
But
view where we get Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy, which is
guys,
awesome.
just listen to this. A steel cage unification for the WCW Tag Team Championships and the WWF Tag Team Champion. You have the Hardy Boys
The
and the
Dudleys,
Dudley Boys
yeah,
in a steel cage unification match.
yeah. There's a great card, great matches. I remember that build for that. Like you said, it wasn't exactly what everybody had always hoped for. It was kind of like it's like you want to take out the hot girl to the prom, but you get her ugly stepsister instead, kind of deal.
I mean, the
Uh,
ugly stepsister probably do everything. Never mind.
but yeah, I remember the build of that, and we also keynote for that is that's the one thing we were missing out of the alliance on the WWF side is no Hunter.
Mhm.
He's this is when he's out with the quad tear. So it'll be interesting. We can have this conversation of what we would have hoped and what would have come off of that would have been interesting. Like what was you guys' opinion have been if WCW would have won? What if WCW ECW would have won and Vince wasn't no longer in charge and the show wasn't WWF? It would have been interesting to build that to see if like they don't come back to it where Vince finally wins it at Mania. That would have been an interesting concept. But I mean, I think that's the only. Is that the only Survivor Series match on that card?
Yes, that is only the 5-on-5. Everything else is singles, unification for the mid card title, tag team title, immunity battle royal.
Yes, yes, I do remember the Immunity Battle Royal. Yes, because the idea was, is whatever team wins, the other people are getting fired,
Mhm.
or that was the concept. So the Battle Royal was the winner, no matter who won, was going to keep their job.
And then 6-pack challenge for the vacant WWF Women's Championship.
Got you, got you, got you.
So
Yeah,
I'm
great card.
excited for that. I'm
Great
really
card.
curious to see what TJ picks the following week. We're not going to get into it now. We're going to let that stew a little bit. But this is leading all the way up to 2023's Survivor Series. We're going to review that in a couple weeks when it happens. But we forgot to mention something about the 1990 Survivor Series, Ryan. This was done on Thanksgiving night.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was a thing. That used to be a thing, guys. Wrestling was on holidays, and nobody batted an eye at it.
Mhm.
So this, it's funny to think because Survivor Series was done to compete with, well,
Ain't nobody competing with
Bruce,
football.
Bruce, Bruce says it wasn't to compete with. Other people have a different feeling about it. WCW or NWA ran Starcade on Thanksgiving night, which is their WrestleMania. They would run it on Thanksgiving night in the Omni in Atlanta or Greensboro, North Carolina. The concept then, like we said before, the pay per views didn't. The house shows is what drew the money for these businesses back then. So they would run holiday shows to compete with the holiday general. I mean, I think there
Yeah.
was only one, maybe two football games on at that time, and it was the Lions, and they were still bad. Um, but like, so they did this on Thanksgiving, and I think eventually it changed to like the night before Thanksgiving,
Hmm.
and then they went completely away from it. WWF was really good at holding pay per views. They would do them on different nights. There wasn't always Sundays. Like the Survivor Series is on a Thursday night. The Royal Rumble's in January and it's on a Saturday night. I think I even remember a Royal Rumble being on a Monday night. Um,
Many people wishes they had shot that gobbledygooker and served that thing for dinner rather than hatchet out the egg.
but I mean, I always looked forward to it because I knew when a pay per view was coming. So like, we would get done Thanksgiving and get wrapped everything up and go home and hit the old phone number up to order the pay per view and sit there with the blue screen that says your show, WWF Survivor Series, will start shortly. And then you just waited for the blue screen to go away, and then wrestling started. And it was like, this is an awesome holiday.
All right. Anybody got anything else of 1990?
How old were you in 1990?
-3.
How old were you in 1990? This would have been November.
Math says 2.
Negative
three.
3. Negative
I-
3.
I was 3. I was a
Math
whole.
says 2.
I was a whole 6 years old when AJ was born.
Goo goo gaga.
I would have been 5.
Damn. To be young, and you're the one walking around like an 80-year-old man.
Why'd you say? I got my walker over here. Leave me alone.
No, that's
Kids-
Dusty's ass. Don't touch it.
Yeah. Let's fill everybody in on what MFJ did last night.
I already told them at
Oh,
the
you did?
open.
I wasn't paying attention to
I
the
fucked
open.
up. I done fucked up. Fucked up good.
Well, since we're almost done, I'm going to give you a little teaser since, Ryan mentioned somebody getting fired. Maybe my Survivor Series has to do with some people getting fired. Anyway, we'll see in 2 weeks. Well, 1 week when I reveal it, and 2 weeks when we do it. Okay, bye-bye now!
He said bye bye.
He just fucked up the magic of them not knowing we record ahead of time.
Like, we go live.
Sooner or later, I would love to, but bye, everybody.
From Mordor to Hogwarts to Gotham, the nerds have come together to create a show for nerds by nerds. Join nerds doing nerd things as they talk about all things nerdy. Stay up to date on the show by liking the Nerds Doing Nerd Things Facebook page.